is Tarik Talk. Your host, Tarik Mendes, takes you on a journey with guests from all around the world. Broadcasting around the world. Around the world. This is Tarik Talk.
All right, guys. Today we are here at Art on Paper Fair with Jodey Kerr. Jodey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
Awesome. Thank you for being on the podcast today. We are at booth G14.
Yes.
With Modrn Earth Gallery.
Correct.
Congratulations. You have such a beautiful booth.
Thank you so much.
Do you mind sharing with us a little bit about the work you have in the booth right now?
Sure. Well, obviously the work is all on paper, but it is more of a mixed media format. So pieces obviously vary slightly, but they're a combination of acrylic paint, some soft pastels. Quite a few of the pieces have a crushed metallic element to them, which creates just this very subtle shimmer to the pieces. So I feel like that is something a little unique to the work that's here.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you said that because that's exactly what happened. Like, it totally grabbed my attention because of that. And can you tell me a little bit about your creative process? Like, how do ideas come to you?
Sure. Well, a lot of people will ask that. They'll say, what is your inspiration?
Yeah.
And I think my inspiration is actually the materials themselves. So what can I get these materials to do? And I try to push the limits of what is like traditionally, expected. I also work multi-layered.
Okay.
So I will paint like a base layer of something and I let that completely dry and then I'll build on top of that. So it just creates a lot of dimension and depth to the pieces. The metallic aspect to it is the final little frosting that goes on top that's very subtle and different.
I love that because looking at your work, I love that I'm not able to tell where you started and where you stopped. There's like so much dimension, as you mentioned, and so much mystery. And then can you tell us about your process at the studio? Are you able to get in the studio and get straight to work, or do you have to have a coffee, read a newspaper, get the vibes, or are you able to get to work right away?
Usually, I have to have my coffee. I know that's pretty much the beginning of every day, no matter what I do. But I have a pretty large studio. I'm just located north of Detroit.
Oh, nice.
And it's funny. I get really excited about just getting up in the morning and working. I like to work mostly in the morning, and I just feel like it's a fresh start to the day. And like I said, I just start off really honestly with a mental mindset of play.
Oh, wow.
Just really let's discover, let's play with these materials and see what happens. And obviously every piece of art, I believe, has to have certain elements, whether you like it or not, to be considered a good piece of art. So from 10 feet away, it should kind of draw your attention. You should be like, oh, that's so interesting. But then as you get closer, you should find something in it that you couldn't see before that's sort of unexpected and surprises you, like a finer detail.
Love
or
that.
In these cases, the metallic element. It's just kind of a little bit of a surprise as you come closer to the work.
Oh, wow. And how do you keep track of your ideas? Do you write them down? Do you draw them? Or do you just do your paintings spontaneous, inspiration hits and you go for it?
Again, so this is I find it interesting because I really don't do any preliminary drawings or planning in advance. It's I work very much fluidly in the moment.
Very organic,
and yes, very organic.
Wow.
I don't mix any colors even in advance. A lot of people will ask me, do you mix a color palette ahead of time? I really don't. I mix all the colors directly on the canvas or the paper in real time. So I move rather quickly. I'm moving and positioning the pieces, turning the pieces, working with paint, things that it's just very fluid and fast. And then, like I said, I'll get to a certain point and then maybe I'll set it aside and I have fans and I'll dry a certain, level of it. And then I continue to build upon those, over multiple days until I find something that I think is
that's amazing.
Really interesting. So.
And when you're working on something and it's not going turning out the way you want it or visualize in your mind, are you able to kind of step away from the studio, or are you an artist that you want to pursue it and keep going to that paint like the artwork is finished?
So such an interesting question, and what's funny is I feel like every artist grows and develops over time, right? And we all kind of have stumbling blocks or things like you said, like, oh, like you're working on something and it isn't going maybe in the way that you want, and sometimes people can get very frustrated. Well, I would say, you know, as a newer artist, I used to very much find myself in that place where I'm like, oh, I've spent all this time and I'm not happy with it and I'm frustrated. But what I've discovered is actually much like your life. You have areas where times or periods of your time where maybe things are a little muddy. They're not as great as you hope they would be. But what I've discovered is that's your base layer. And oftentimes some of my best pieces come out of those pieces that I thought were just a mess that I wasn't going to use. And by allowing wherever that is where I felt like it wasn't working to completely dry and come back to it the next day and build on top of it, I find that turns out ironically to be the best base. So those muddy layers are great for contrast when you build color other things on top of it, other elements, and it ends up becoming some of my best work. So now I look at it as though, instead of feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm so frustrated, this isn't working for me, I look at it as like, oh, this is just the beginning. This is just the base. And so there's nothing to be really frustrated about if you think about it as it's part of the process and it's just a layer. And, you know, multi-layers get built on that. I love that.
That's so cool. And do you ever look back at some of your work and you like visually see like, wow, this makes so much sense because I was going through this and this in my life and now I get it like much later on? Did you ever have a moment like that?
You know, it's interesting. I mean, yes, I will say yes, but ironically, like I said, because I don't plan and I don't necessarily draw or do studies, and I'm not intentional about like, oh, I want this to be a floral or I want this to be a landscape. Because I don't do that, it's not as obvious to me in the moment, but then when the pieces are completed, I often look at them and notice exactly what you're saying. I'll like, wow, that really portrays this transition that I feel like I'm experiencing in my own life, you know, that maybe it is a darker piece or, you know, something like that. And I'm like, wow, that kind of does reflect my mood right now, but I didn't start off with that intention. So it's just as fun for me as the artist, I feel like, that it is to the viewer, because it becomes a surprise even to me.
I love that.
And I also love, I mean, all my work is abstract in nature, which I feel like I should mention because obviously it's a podcast and people aren't really looking at it at the moment, but it is abstract. And, you know, I think one of the beautiful things about abstract art is that every viewer gets to interpret it for themselves. And so when you even purchase a piece, you purchase it because you've fallen in love with it, right? But when you have it in your home, every person that comes in gets to experience it for themselves. So it's like a gift to them as well.
Absolutely,
and a great conversation piece to say, like, what do you see in this? Or how does this impact you? And that's one of the reasons why I love doing the shows too, is you get everybody's feedback. And you see what they love about it. And it's so fun as an artist to get that feedback, whether, like I said, whether they buy or they don't buy. I just love to see, like, oh, this is so beautiful, I love this about it, or it makes me feel this way or that way. Like, that's a gift to receive as a creator, to realize that you're impacting someone in a special way.
Well, I love that, because that was actually going to be my next question, because some artists that I speak to, they don't like hearing feedback or talking to the observer, but they love seeing people observe the work or taking pictures. So it seems that you kind of want that input, that feedback, like what do they see, how it represents to them.
I mean, so even this slight metallic element that is in these pieces is a newer technique for me, and it's been great to just see people how they're drawn to it, and they love the subtlety of it and the mood that it creates. And so it's just special to me, I think, just to see, like, oh, I'm spending all this time, I'm working on these pieces, I'm putting so much of myself into it. but you don't know how it's going to be received. And to kind of come to a place where you have all these different people from ages, different walks of life, whatever it is, and to see that it's affecting people and they're drawn to it, and in a sea of all this beautiful art, that someone, you know, is drawn to come in and stop and take a look and spend a few minutes with you. I mean, I find that it's an honor, right? That there's something that you've decided to take your time
and they can connect with it,
and have a conversation or ask a question. I mean, like I said, it has nothing to do for me with someone purchasing it in the end. I mean, yes, obviously that's great if somebody decides to purchase it, but I do really enjoy just seeing that somebody loves it.
Yeah, you know, well, I love that. Thank you so much, Jodey. It was a pleasure getting to know you and about your work. We are in booth G14. Yes. And would you mind sharing your Instagram one more time for the listeners?
Sure, it's Jodey Kerr Art, so JodeyKerrArt. It's just
perfect.
At Jodey Kerr Art.
Perfect.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Tarik Talk. Follow Tarik Talk on all social media channels and check out the video interviews online.